Hello, and welcome to the Florpcast, the only podcast that reciprocates your parasocial relationship. Because once you florp, you just can't lorp. What do we think?
Yeah, that'll do.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about co-op games, as well as one or two anti-co-op games. But before we can do that, we've got to go fast.
So Sonic just turned 30, which is terrifying because I always kind of assumed that Sonic was around before I was born.
I mean, I've always assumed that anybody born after Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was released just doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about anything. But now it's a lot of people I meet.
That's a good yardstick, actually.
It used to be.
Yeah, God, I'm older than Sonic. So my first memory of Sonic, actually, I think it was the first video game I ever owned was Sonic the Hedgehog 1.
Wow.
Ditto.
And yeah, so I had the Sega Master System version. Actually, I say it was the first video game that I ever owned. It was technically the second because the Sega Master System Mark II that I had came with Alex the Kid built in. And I must
that game is terrible.
It's terrible and incredibly hard.
Yeah, well, you isn't that the one where you go into a building and you play Janken or rock paper scissors, and if you lose, you die?
Yes, that is the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you ever get a Mega Drive? I just want to make a note at this point. We are British, in case you couldn't tell, and in our strange and ancient kingdom of Avalon, the Sega Genesis was known as the Sega Mega Drive. A lot of people, when they talk about those bygone days, like to sort of say both, sort of that's Genesis if you're from America. We're not going to do that because you people are wrong.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is I've never owned a console up until we got like an Xbox. My dad won in a competition when I was like 17. So any of these games as a kid, I always had to wait for them to be like PC ported or something. So I think I only played Sonic like 10 years after everybody else did, when it was like some box set of 4 Sonic games or something.
Well, what I just learned recently about at least Sonic 1, I don't know if it's true about the others, is that the PAL version, because back in the day, console games were slightly different depending on the region you lived in, like the global region, and in Europe we had PAL systems, and I only learned recently that those ran at a lower frame rate, and that Sonic 1 not only ran at the sort of natively lower frame rate of I think 50 hertz, because that made it compatible with European TVs, but I heard that it also just kind of ran like crap in general, which I was not aware of. So what I thought I was playing this game that was blowing my little 4-year-old mind, or however old I was. Did it come out in 1991 or 1990? I was either 3 or 4 anyway. But I don't think I got it just then. But yeah, I learned recently that the American version and all the other like worldwide versions just looked the business and ran at a sort of a super sharp 60 frames per second, and we were struggling along with the shitty version. But now I feel okay about that because Joel was playing it on the Master System, which I assume made it look like it was drawn with a wax crayon.
Well, I was playing 8-bit Sonic, yeah, because the Master System was an 8-bit console, and then the Mega Drive was 16, right? So it was like double the fidelity essentially. So it didn't run great. It wasn't brilliant. But at the time, like I find it strange that you said like, well, the NTSC version was running at a higher frame rate. I mean, I was fucking 6. Like I didn't have a clue.
So I didn't know, because it still completely overtook my imagination. I thought it was absolutely amazing. We didn't have that many Mega Drive games by the time that era came to the end, but we had a decent selection, and I would always come back to Sonic, 1, 2, and 3, and Knuckles. And I guess since it's the 30th anniversary, we should talk about the rest of it. Now, for me, I think of Sonic in much the same way as I think of Star Wars, in that there's the originals and then there's some shit. And in the case of Sonic,
whoa, hang on. Have you never rolled around at the speed of sound?
On many occasions, and at the time, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 did blow my mind again. while I was a stupid teenager, but those games don't hold up in my humble opinion. I've gone back to them fairly recently, and yeah,
we can argue about that shortly.
But I would agree with that Star Wars point in that I'm like, yeah, I love the original Star Warses. Loads of the rest of ones are crap, but I still love them, and I'm still going to watch every single second of it, even though I hate it.
No, not in this case.
Yeah, that doesn't hold up with Sonic at all.
No.
Okay.
No. The debate that rages around Sonic in the modern era is there's been such a string of terrible 3D games, and the adventure games have not held up well in many people's estimation, and are now looked back on unfavorably, that the question has been raised of, was Sonic ever good? And I find it very difficult to answer that question because I know the Mega Drive games like the back of my hand. I can play them pretty much reflexively, and with one hand tied behind my back, sort of thing. Although not literally, because that way I could either jump or move and not both. And so I'm not really qualified to answer that question, but I did go back through a few in preparation of this podcast and sort of find out what I think holds up and what doesn't. And I think the big weakness of Sonic, the original Mega Drive games, is the enemies, because most of them are either not a threat at all, or they pose a threat that you can't react to because you are sort of going too fast. There's an enemy in Sonic 2 in my favorite zone in that game, the Metropolis zone, which looks like a little like praying mantis. It's a little green dude with these two metal sickle-shaped blades, and once you come onto the screen, it fires them in a sort of arc. And I think the intended what they were supposed to do is fire them and kind of trick you, where if you jump into the blades and you get hurt, but if you just spin dash along the ground, you'll go under them and go into it. But you're usually going so fast that they just hit you either way. And my favorite thing about these enemies, I think they're called slicers, is after they fire their blades at you, they kind of go around in a boomerang shape, but they don't actually come back and reattach. And once they've fired them, they just kind of stand there with these cute little bug eyes, and they're like, well, I guess you're going to kill me now. Oh, well. And they're actually kind of adorable, but the games are full of these enemies that you can either just kind of blaze past and completely ignore, or just stop everything you're doing and kill them, and that's not very difficult to do.
So, yeah, I get the point where you say that the weakness of Sonic is the enemies, and I probably put, obviously, because I was 6 years old and I didn't have anything else to play, I probably put hundreds of hours into the original Sonic game. But I think if I had a choice between Sonic and some other platformer, I probably would have chosen the other platformer. I'm not a huge fan, and I think that I only really played them because it was the only option I had. And for me, rather than it being a problem with the enemies, it's a lot more to do with the fact that a lot of the game is kind of hold right, and then you jump at certain points. And I understand that there's different pathways through the level. So if you're good and you have fast reflexes, you can jump earlier, so you can access the higher tracks in the game and get through the level faster. But any other 2D kind of platforming game kind of does it for me more. Like, I know you can't really compare them, but the NES Mario games, I would have much rather been playing that than been playing Sonic.
So that was always my problem with Sonic, and like I've said before on the podcast, I've got not great reflexes, so any of those really speedy ones is where I've always really struggled. And it's making me think back to what was the platformers that I was playing back then, and like Prince of Persia, that slow moving, take your time, find the exact right hop. That was what I was obsessed with, probably around the same time you guys were all playing Sonic.
Whenever this debate comes up, people talk about, as Joel just did, the gameplay of Sonic being go right and go very fast, and at the expense of going very fast, or you go very fast at the expense of sort of platforming precision, and as I mentioned, being able to sort of take on the enemies with precision, and that's the big difference. But to the Sonic aficionado, aka me, there are several main elements of a Sonic game that are not just holding right and going fast. One of them is exploration. Joel mentioned trying to get onto the higher tracks and stay on them, and that's a cool thing, which I think Sonic Generations, which was maybe I don't even want to look, but several years ago now, did really well. That was half 2D and half 3D Sonic, and in the 2D levels it was very much dividing it into tracks and remembering where you had to jump to get onto the higher ones. That was cool. And Sonic Mania, which is the modern darling that is still a 2D game, is kind of supposed to be a sequel to the old ones, also does very well. It's all about the exploration. But what people forget about, I think, are the bosses, which were amazing and extremely awesome. And then the special stages. Really, the goal of the game was to complete them with all of the Chaos Emeralds. And in the first game, the challenge to get to the special stages in the first place was you had to finish the level with 50 rings. And then in the other games, you had to get past a checkpoint with 50 rings and then jump into or in Sonic 2, then you had to get past a checkpoint with 50 rings. And then in Sonic 3, they were kind of scattered around the map. These portals, it didn't matter how many rings you had, and then you'd get into the special stages. So really, it was a layered challenge. You had these mini games which were often really, really good. The ones in Sonic 2, I think, are awesome, and we might be able to segue into co-op gameplay from there, because if you had someone helping you out, i.e. your little brother playing Tails, who was having a miserable time the rest of the time because Tails doesn't get to do shit and is off the screen half the time, that person could actually really help you out in those and actually mess it up if they hit the bombs. The big missed opportunity for me in terms of Sonic is the third game brought in this mechanic that I've only come to appreciate recently, but which I think could have made the entire game extremely awesome. When Sonic 3 came out, they made a big deal that they had lots of these 3 different shields in the game. And I remember those being advertised on the back of Kellogg's Frosties because they really wanted the kids to play this game. But it also gave you the ability to, if you press the jump button again in midair, you get this thing that was called the Insta Shield, which was this awesome little flash of white around Sonic. Only Sonic could do it. And it gave you a little sort of very thin and very instantaneous layer of protection. And there were lots of enemies in that game that if you timed that perfectly, you could destroy them or jump and attack them at a time when if you didn't use it correctly, you would get hurt. And I think they could have made just the whole series based around that. Like always be going fast, always be going, forward at high speed, jumping obstacles that are coming your way. And then enemies sort of keeping pace with you with these kind of phased attack patterns where if you time your little shield thing correctly, you can flash past their attacks and hit them. And I think that would have made a more engaging game. And it's a shame nobody asked me because it would have been great.
See, I think you're going to be angry when I say that I think my favorite Sonic game is Sonic Adventure 2.
Why though?
Because
why would you say that?
It just feels like there's more to it. I know the 2D games are classic, and I've played an absolute ton of them. But I don't know, Sonic Adventure 2 had a kind of like the world was built in a way where it kind of the Sonic universe really came to life. And some of the I'll admit to myself, the only levels that I really enjoyed, because in Sonic Adventure 2, just to let everybody know, you had levels where you play as Sonic, which were, go fast, complete the stage in as quick and as flashy a way as possible. And then you also had levels where you played as Tails. And the Tails levels, you were like piloting a mech essentially through platforms and blowing up robots and shooting stuff. And then you had levels where you played as Knuckles, which were atrocious. Like I hated them. The whole idea
so
of the
boring.
Oh, it was so bad. The Knuckles levels, you were put on a map, and they had like this randomly generated location for these hidden emeralds, but they weren't. I don't think they were anywhere that you could see. They were always like buried underground. So you had
to find them. Oh, some of them actually could be out in the open.
Okay,
Sorry.
some of them could be out in the open, but majority of the time, I found at least, that you were wandering around and you had this kind of like metal detector mechanic where this thing would start beeping. Yeah, like start beeping as you got closer to it. So you had to just scour the entire map, like trying to find these hidden underground gems and then dig in the exact spot to find them. And you had to find 3 a level. And then every time that these like Knuckles levels would come up, it would just be such a slog. And it almost stopped me wanting to play. But the Sonic levels were good enough for me to... Because they added lots of new mechanics, like the homing attack and being able to like zip along a line of rings and stuff. They just kind of made it fun. And yeah, I think it is my favorite Sonic game. And one of the... actually, the big deciding factors on that is the soundtrack of the first level is just a straight banger.
It isn't. Yes, Crush 40. Those wizardly magicians. Yeah, so I adored Adventure 1 and 2 when they both came out. But yeah, in hindsight, Adventure 1 is just broken as fuck. You'll just fall through the floor and die at so many points playing as Sonic, and it's not even funny. Although it did have some good ideas, and I liked the kind of Panzer Dragoon-esque, because of course I did, plane flying stage. But since then, it's kind of moved. The 3D ones have kind of fallen apart a bit, and I do agree that the Tails and Robotnik levels in Sonic Adventure 2 are very slow and plodding and boring, and the Knuckles and Rouge the Bat levels, because who the fuck wanted that character, are just a disaster. So it's all about Sonic and Shadow. But since then, there have been a couple of fan games that have taken our interest. One of which you love because it's like Sonic Adventure, and I despise because I don't understand why anyone wants to recreate Sonic Adventure. And one that I don't know if you've played or not. Did I ever get you to play Sonic Robo Blast 2?
No, you didn't. But I remember you mentioned it briefly, and you said it was amazing.
Yeah, so the first time I played this game, it's a fan-made Sonic game made in the original Doom engine. Not the original Doom engine, but like I mean a version of the engine for Doom, like the old school Doom games. And the first time I played it, I hated it because I tried to play it with a keyboard and mouse, which it suggests doing, and I found it unplayable. But then I tried playing it with a controller, which I just feel is how Sonic should be played. And I absolutely adore it, and I've played it shitloads over the past year or so. But it solves all the problems because it's incredibly fast. You can see everything from miles away, which is which is the biggest problem that the 2D games had, at least the sort of standard level parts of them, because you're blazing through these landscapes. At least for any part of them where you're supposed to go fast, you're just blazing through and you can't see what's coming your way. But in the Doom engine, you can see for miles, and so it gives you really good precision platforming at incredibly high speeds. Lots of environmental exploration, which is kind of one of my pillars of Sonic games. The special stages work like Nights into Dreams, the cult classic Sega Saturn hit, which I also enjoyed. And getting Supersonic in that game, getting all of the Chaos Emeralds and being able to turn into Supersonic is more rewarding than it's ever been. That game is an absolute masterpiece. What do you want to talk about the other one that you suggested that I've forgotten about already because it's terrible?
I mean, sure, but it's basically just like a redone, better visual Sonic Adventure 2. There's really not much else to say. It's like if you kind of like that 3D Sonic era, then and you want to play something a bit more updated and modern, then yeah, it was great. What was it called? I remember I linked it to you, but I can't remember.
I've forgotten. That's the trouble. I only played it that once. So I was like, yeah, this is everything I hate. And then we can talk about something that Dan can talk about. I'm sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm when I think back to my favorite bit of Sonic's, and I have no idea which games they are or anything, was the one where you would go around in like a little 2D spinning around thing, and then you'd hit a little special bit, and you go into a little like 3D kind of Tron-like world where you just go like left, right, and you have to like collect coins and block off whole areas. What was that?
What was that? Collect coins and block off areas?
And it would go from a 2D world to like you'd be like a like a third-person view of Sonic running around along like a little grid. You remember like the Tron bike race, the light races from Tron?
When you say a grid, do you mean a big sphere?
Yeah, that's like the bonus stage you're talking about from Sonic.
It was
that's
a sphere.
Special stages from Sonic 3.
But I mean, it was like a square grid on a sphere that you would run along, and you were trying to collect everything.
Yeah, blue spheres. Yeah,
you had to like jump over the red ones and touch the blue ones.
Yeah, that's right. And the blue ones would turn red.
Yeah.
I enjoyed those.
That's my most vivid Sonic memory.
The fan-made remake game was called Sonic Omens, and yeah, it's just like a really updated version of Sonic Adventure, the Sonic Adventure series. It has full voice acting, all that kind of stuff, and it's fan-made, so it's free to play. So if you are interested, I do recommend going to check it out, despite what Tom says.
As is Sonic Robo Blast 2, which has been in development for about 1 million years, and has an awesome soundtrack as well. I can't remember. Does Omens have music?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has music. I think,
and it's pretty good. I do remember that being good. And I'm just messing. I'm amazed by that game. It actually is as good, if not better, than many of the official games. but I mean that's faint praise indeed, but still remarkable achievement.
Still praise.
And just as little brothers the world over got roped into playing Tails and Sonic 3 so that they could carry Sonic around, we're going to talk about cooperative gaming and how that has evolved since then, which it has in enormous ways, leaps and bounds.
Yeah, so I've come up with my 3 favorite co-op games to play right now, based off of how much of a hardcore mood I'm in. So some of the co-op games, they take like a real amount of concentration and real teamwork between the players in order to progress. And some of them are just more like casual hangout type games where it's almost like a just an excuse for like a chat room in game form. So I've got for my super hardcore co-op game, I've got GTFO. And then I've got for my kind of mid-tier, like general yay fun co-op game, I've got Monster Hunter World.
Okay.
That's your non-hardcore one.
That's non-hardcore, yeah. My hardcore one is super fucking hardcore. But I like these kind of games. I like games that I kind of like the stress, and I like it that everyone has to be like a cooperative game. To me should be everyone is having to work together to achieve a set goal. And with GTFO especially, it's the kind of thing like if one of your team fucks up, you've probably screwed up the entire mission. They're going to have to start again.
Oh god, I couldn't handle that kind of stress.
Yeah, so GTFO is, I think it's still in early access, but it is quite far along, and it's very, very polished in terms of an early access game. So don't let that put you off. And the easiest kind of parallel to draw, so you get an idea in your head of what GTFO is probably with Left 4 Dead or Left 4 Dead 2, which I know one of you is bound to be talking about later.
Mm-hmm.
So what GTFO is, it's a kind of futuristic, post-apocalyptic, first-person shooter game, but it's not really a first-person shooter. It's more of a co-op stealth game. What it involves is you diving down into an underground facility that looks very kind of Nostromo from Alien, like that kind of ship and vibe. Everything is really dark and pitch black and grungy and horrible, you know? And you and a team of 3 others are crawling through these underground complexes using your flashlights, and the area is infested with what they call sleepers, which are kind of like zombies, but it's not in the kind of like horde wave vein that something like Left 4 Dead, like arcadey, shootery, you know, run from one point to another and get out. It's very much the kind of you're carefully planning and crawling through these areas, and these sleepers have are like glowing heartbeats. So you see in the distance, in the pitch black, you'll see these like red glows that will brighten and then darken again. So you have a vague idea of where these guys are, and it's down to you and your team to kind of coordinate your way through this maze of these sleepers, and that can involve everything that you do in the game makes noise. And if you make too much noise, the entire complex could wake up and they'd be on you and you're just done. There's no way you're going to survive if you make one of these mistakes without setting up for it first. And one of the main mechanics is you and your team are kind of crawling through, and you have these big melee weapons, these big hammers, and you will coordinate with the rest of your team like a 3-2-1 execute kind of thing to knock out a key sleeper in a certain location that you need to get through. And the game is really about navigating your way through this maze of tunnels, and the navigation itself is really part of the game. So you have to look at signs and things. There's no real mini map that's easily accessible, so you know exactly where you're going. So you're looking at the walls for like area numbers and area codes, or hacking into terminals to find out how to open a certain door and make your way through this maze. And as you pass through all these kind of security checkpoints and stuff, eventually you'll get to an area where you're going to have to, you know, open a door that is going to make some noise. So you are going to wake some people up. So that's where the first-person shooter element really comes in. But you're trying to use it as a last resort. And yeah, it's just super good. It's really stressful. But in terms of pure co-op gameplay, where everyone needs to be concentrating, everyone needs to like step up and fulfill their role, it's just it's incredibly good and one of the most underrated games I've seen. And I think that is heavily down to the fact that matchmaking wasn't in the game for quite a while. They have added it now, so you can get games with randoms, but it's really designed for if you have a few mates to jump in and you really want a challenge. It's just so good. Like I really enjoy it.
That sounds amazing. That actually sounds like right up my street. Especially, I just googled to see a little screenshot of it, and it looks scary as well, which I feel could really pull you in.
It really leans on that kind of horror element, and you don't have to be this like first person shooter god because it's not about that. It's more about planning and stealth.
Okay, so we've definitely got to play that whenever you're next on. I'm down.
Yeah, it's like I think it's on sale at the moment. It's like 20 quid or something, and you can do it with like two people, but I don't think the game scales. So you can you can play with two people, but you would four people is the regular.
It sounds great, but it also sounds like something I would be terrible at because I would be the guy that messes up. I would be the person who is like, oh, I don't want to do things the way that we're currently doing them. I just want to pop over here and see what's in this room, and then I would wake up a sleeper, and he would be very angry, and everyone would be angry, and everyone would be angry with me.
Thinking back, I remember when I was really into Left 4 Dead 1 with one of Dan, your housemates at the time. Was playing Left 4 Dead a lot on Xbox, and we actually got into like a competitive league on Game Battles. This was like Xbox 360 Left 4 Dead 1, and we took it really seriously, which we shouldn't, because the versus mode in that game is brilliant. But I remember at the time, I think me and Chris tried to get you involved at one point, and I think you had the same kind of reaction even back then. You were like, I don't know if I should play, guys.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I do vaguely remember that.
Yeah, because you didn't want the responsibility.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, I didn't have an Xbox, so I couldn't have played anyway. But are you sure you guys weren't playing on PC? Because
No, it was Xbox 360 at the time. Yeah, I think it was Xbox 360. Or maybe we were trying to bully you into get a console so you could play with us. But
that could have been it.
Yeah, your main reason for not playing, I think, is because I think it was mainly because you didn't want Chris to shout at you. But
that's entirely possible.
Wasn't the original Left 4 Dead just a modded Half-Life mod though, which would be a PC only thing?
Grew out of that, I think.
I know. I thought the original. I didn't know if it went on to other things. Maybe it did. PC Master Race, of course. I have no idea otherwise. Well, so this GTFO sounds a lot like, it's grown out of that Left 4 Dead 2 especially, which was one of my top picks for a co-op game of that, very rudimentary, but a lot more chaotic of just you open the door, everybody runs. I mean, when you're playing it on your own, you can kind of sneak and you're doing it a little bit under control. And as soon as you've got a group, it's absolute chaos is most of what I remember from Left 4 Dead 2. But the reason I loved it so much, and still do, I played it a few months ago, again, is you get that. It was the very first time, I think, of playing a real co-op game online with people, because, for the first time, you're actually depending on the other people with you. You can't just have one person run off and take control of the whole thing. And that, especially for somebody who doesn't play a whole load of first-person shooters, that kind of team-building thing really worked really well for me. And I love that game. And it's one of those things that it sounds like people have taken kind of lessons from that and turned it into brand new, exciting games.
Yeah, totally. And I had a very similar experience because growing up, I didn't have any, because I only had consoles growing up. It wasn't until much later, really, that I got into PC gaming. But all the consoles I had before that didn't really have internet capability. It was the Xbox 360, I think, that I first got Xbox Live and started playing online. And yeah, what a transformation that is. And I think it's similar to you, Dan. Left 4 Dead was one of the first experiences I had with like 3 friends all working towards a common objective. And it really was one of the first big co-op experiences I think probably a lot of people had from our generation.
Up until that point, I think me and one of my best friends especially, we would always try and do games as co-op. So things like Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun. We team up and go against other people. I remember Splinter Cell 3, I think, where you could either be the spy or the mercenaries, and you're there, and so we would try and be doing all of these kind of things. Go in as a two and fight against some other people. So not true co-ops in that sense, but all of those things we were obsessed with. We've got a dial-up modem. We can connect our two computers. We used to do it with Theme Hospital, where you could have two on the same one, and just getting the internet connected, and you can be like on a game together, and it used to blow our minds.
You just mentioned a game that just triggered a memory for me. It was over my friend's house, and I think he had the original Xbox, and he had it hooked up to the internet. Was it Splinter Cell? I want to say Chaos Theory, but I might be wrong on what
that was 3. And yeah, that was the one with Spies and Mercenaries. Yeah,
Spies and Mercenaries
incredible.
Was so fucking good, and I'll let you break down what the actual mode was, because I can't remember too much about it. But what I do remember is it was one of the first games that so it's like a stealth action game. Think Metal Gear Solid. You can sneak up behind someone and like get them in a chokehold. And I remember in Chaos Theory, I'm pretty sure, unless this is just what my friend was telling me, but you could like, after you've chokeholded a guy, you could use the Xbox Live headset and like whisper in the dude's ear.
Yes.
Like of the other team. You could headlock them and be like, "Gotcha, bitch."
Gotcha now, baby.
And that blew my mind. That blew my mind that I was able to do this, and that's what a standout memory that was.
Yeah, that game was amazing.
It is making me. As you're saying that, I was certain Chaos Theory was definitely. I was like, that's the one that came out after what I had. Turns out I was talking about Splinter Cell number 2, Pandora Tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I remember Chaos Theory coming out and being like, okay, it's good, but it's no Pandora Tomorrow. And I just looked at it. 2004 that came out, so I think it was the very early days of still like plugging in a dial-up, and it was so excited to be playing with other people around the world, and you could absolutely flame people, and it was ridiculous because there was no rules on the internet at that point.
I mean, are there really that many rules now?
Wow. Well, I got started in the earlier and more innocent days of Phantasy Star Online, which was a sort of basically anime Diablo from a kind of third-person over-the-shoulder perspective. But I didn't really play very much of it because my internet connection was really dodgy at the time. So yeah, like Joel, I really got into online play on the Xbox. But I did briefly play Splinter Cell, but I think I got it after people stopped playing. So I never got to have any proper games with it that I remember, but I know it was freaking awesome. So my favorite kind of co-op mechanic, and probably a lot of people's, is the Immortal Dark Souls and the Souls series in general. And it's kind of surprising for me to say that in a way. I took a long time to get around to playing Dark Souls because I was sort of vaguely aware of it. And Joel told me about it and told me that I had to play it because it was really hard and it would make me angry. And eventually I finally caved. I got it. I think the reason I didn't want to play it was because I didn't own a controller for my PC at the time, and I kept using that as a lame excuse. But then I finally got one, and I played it, and it's probably my favorite game of all time now. But the first time I played it, Joel, you kind of explained how the online multiplayer aspects of it worked, and my immediate reaction was, that's dumb and stupid. I don't want random people joining my game without my kind of say and ruining everything. So I played it the first time through in offline mode because I just thought it sounded shit. And since then, I played it like a million times and left it kind of online. And I think the idea of being able to summon somebody else who's playing the game into your world to help you out is genius. And I like the idea of other people invading, and I'm a filthy Dark Wraith Covenant guy, and I like to go and ruin other people's days. But the cooperative element of that is just genius. If you're having a hard time with a part of the game, somebody else out there will leave their summon sign and engage with you in jolly cooperation. And it's just wonderful just seeing somebody else. Sometimes they'll sort of raise out of the ground in their glowing yellow phantom will be completely buck naked, or they'll be I remember one time I was in Dark Souls 2. I was using a very silly build with 2 great swords, and you summoned me for a bit, and you just went, what are you doing? Just looking ridiculous. And I think that's a really good way to have fun with your friends, is rock stupid builds and join each other and then go and invade some fool, or the other way around, have somebody invade you and then get your health on. And I think that led to a lot of really entertaining organic moments, even if it does kind of change the tone of the game somewhat.
Definitely. But how, just to kind of theorize, how do you think Dark Souls would fare if it had more of a traditional co-op experience? Do you think it would add to the game or detract from it?
You mean if you could just like play the game
in
sort of
co-op
start from
mode?
The beginning with two?
Yeah.
I mean, that would obviously they'd need to completely rebalance it. Which you'd need to have a bunch more enemies. I think if you just stuck somebody else in the game from the word go, it would just be way too easy. And of course, the challenge is part of the appeal. And I mean, the best part of those games for me is discovering the new world that they've created. And I feel like that's best done alone. Can't really back that up with anything. It's just kind of a personal preference. But
yeah, it's just because there's a few people that would argue that the kind of summoning system is just kind of like an arbitrary like wall in the way of playing co-op, because technically you could go place your summon sign like at the beginning of the game, right, and then just like refresh it a million times so your buddy could eventually summon you and you play through the game co-op. But it kind of relies on you having already completed that part of the game, which is just like a weird way of doing it.
Yeah, like I guess you could play it as a sort of party thing. You and three buddies. That's a really good idea. I certainly think a game of that type could work that way. Sure, why not?
I'm gonna have to cut in here and say I've never played Dark Souls. I don't really understand what it is outside of memes, and I didn't even realize there was a co-op mode. But that sounds great now.
We will make you do it when we have a streaming channel, and everyone can point at you and laugh.
That would actually be Dark Souls noob gets destroyed.
It is for me. It's the closest we've ever come to the perfect video game.
Yeah, it's like apart from Dark Souls 2, which was a bit of a disappointment.
Oh yeah. Well,
and also Bloodborne is better than all of them.
Or it would be if it wasn't a PlayStation exclusive and they could fix the fucking frame pacing issues.
True. Yeah.
There's also, I don't like the early game in Bloodborne. Like, I agree the setting is absolutely magnificent and it's an incredible game. But there's the sort of the first, not the first, but after, what is it called? I think Old Yharnam, maybe the bit with the guy with the Gatling gun on the cathedral top. I find a stretch of the game starting roughly then is kind of a bit grindy. It could just be because I suck, because I haven't played Bloodborne that much, but I always find in that bit I feel under-leveled, even if I'm not, and that's why I often just kind of, if I'm going to play that, I'll kind of stop at that point and go play something else instead. But yeah, the way the story goes in that game is, it's perfect.
It's amazing. And I think there's a certain amount, like, I know you haven't played Bloodborne a massive amount, but you can't play it like Dark Souls, essentially. And you do feel very underpowered if you play it like Dark Souls. You have to be way more aggressive. There's mechanics put in the game that reward you being aggressive, such as after taking a hit, if you immediately go on the offensive, you can regain health, stuff like that. But I think, yeah, that easily sits up there on my top games of all time, above all of the Dark Souls games.
So moving on back to our sort of co-op list, we should briefly mention one that's taken up a whole bunch of our time, which is, or two rather, the big MOBAs, League of Legends and Dota 2, which I would argue are not really competitive or cooperative games at all. They are doubly competitive in my opinion. They're supposed to be team games, but what's really going on is there's the actual game objective, which is to destroy the enemy base. And then there's the game that people are really playing, which is to be the first to identify a teammate as having made a mistake. And that's how you win, is you have everybody else dogpiling one of the other team members and blaming them for your inevitable loss.
You might be playing a different game to a lot of other people there,
Tom. No.
I mean, you definitely, I think out of the three of us, you definitely have had the worst experience with the Dota community.
It's because I played on my own, which you should not do. They are incredible games if you play them with friends. If you play them on your own, they are a long, winding path to suicide.
Yeah, I mean, vast majority of the people who play this game play it on solo queue, though, right? They just queue up and go in for a game, and they just must have like super online resilience. I don't get it, because it is like you getting beat down every game, not just by the other team, but by the people on your team.
And it often starts before the game does.
See, but I really don't remember much of this whole super toxic flaming. I mostly remember people just not really talking, and we all just kind of get on with it. And then every so often, maybe one in every 3 or 4 games, somebody would get super flamey, and then everybody would be like, everybody just mute him, and then we just carry on.
That's because you were in Scrubtown.
I mean, okay, yeah, maybe just because I wasn't so top tier to have all of everybody having shit fits every time.
Well, actually, Scrubtown no longer exists. The lower echelons or lower rankings of Dota are now infested with Smurfs. Everyone there is it's comical. Everyone who is playing is on a Smurf account, and they expect everyone else to be on a Smurf account. So you get flamed as if you're like a high ranked player who should know what he's doing, even if you are an actual legit noob who's never played the game. People will be like, "Oh my god," and they'll sort of use game lingo to berate you for your poor performance. And if you're an actual new player, you're just like, well, I don't understand. So then you never play again. But yeah, let's move on to one of your other suggestions.
I think we could talk about MOBAs and Dota for probably a whole other podcast one day, because I mean that was one of the first things I remember us all spending a lot of time. Well, me spending a lot of time with you two at least.
Yeah.
We spent so much, so we'll save that for another
Just
day.
to put it in a bit of context for everyone, me and Tom probably are in the couple of 1,000 hours into Dota.
Yeah, I've got a nice round 2,000.
Yeah, I think I've got about roughly 2,000, and Dan, you're probably in you probably like scratching a couple of 100 hours. I would have thought the amount of time you put in.
Because I've got my Steam open in the background, I can tell you 515 hours.
515 hours. Holy shit! Yeah, that's a lot more
Wow.
than I thought that you had.
Based on how terrible I am.
I mean, I didn't say it, but you know. No, but me and Tom played for a long time, and we came from League of Legends originally, back in almost from the open beta of League. I think it was just after that closed. Me and Tom got on it from then.
Season 1 OGs.
Yeah, but Dan, you played the original Warcraft 3 mod Dota for a bit, didn't you?
Yeah, so I mean, so that was one of my absolute all-time favorite games. Probably my all-time favorite game is Warcraft 3 and Frozen Throne and those. But all of the modding community around it was just amazing, and I was obsessed. So the original Dota on there was something. It was a bit try hard. There was a lot that you had to learn on there, so I'd play it sometimes. But I was obsessed with loads of the other mods, and there was the kind of the Helm's Deep and the Lord of the Rings ones that people had made, or Footman Frenzy, and all of these things that kind of lent themselves and fed into all of these mods that got developed. So I would play original Dota. I got quite into modding myself. I don't know if either of you guys ever used the map editor where you could create your own mods in Warcraft. Did either of you ever use that?
I never played Warcraft.
What the absolute fuck?
I know, right?
Best story of a game ever, but we'll get back to that later.
Yeah, I didn't really mess around with the mods and stuff, but I did dabble in the original Dota, but I had absolutely no idea what was going on, and back then it was really a case of like you're on your own to learn exactly how to play the game. But I feel like that hasn't really changed. I mean, there are like a ton of guides and stuff out there on YouTube that you can find for Dota 2 now and how to like learn the game and get good. But I don't think anything can really prepare you for what you have to do in that game. It is just a case of you better have a few thousand hours spare in order to kind of to get to know where, so you know what you're doing in that game, you know. But I don't regret the time. Like I love Dota for the time that I played it, but I don't think I could ever go back to it now. One of the reasons being it just seems so distant. Like I've picked up some, like I've seen the odd game and stuff, like the latest internationals and stuff. and it just looks like a completely different game. Like there's people there, the new characters and stuff that I don't know what they're doing. The map is completely different. There's these shrines everywhere. I'm like, it's just too much. And every time I even consider going back, I'm like, no, I just don't think I could do it.
I love it. I keep up with the pro scene, and I watch the international every year, and increasingly quite a lot outside of it. But yeah, it also changed immensely, and I couldn't keep up with it. There's no way. And I'm banned,
you can
so
you can go back if you wanted to.
I'd have to create a Smurf and join in with all my shitty brethren.
So yeah, so when the Warcraft modding thing was like really big, and especially around Dota 1, it was the Wild West because there was no real. I mean, there was a core team of somebody developing it, but anybody would take one, add in a fix or add in a new item. So it got really out of hand of just version 2.7.3.1.8 as everybody was developing these new ones. But it did mean that you could really grab these games, take them down, and start editing them yourself. And I think for me, it was really one of my first experiences in doing programming, because it wasn't real programming. It was all very Boolean variables and if this, then that. But it was that kind of experience of taking how a game works and tweaking it into something else. So it was really good. And I remember trying to make various different versions because I was like, I'll make this new mod. It'll be really popular. I'll be world famous. And I tried to make a wacky races one where all taking different buildings and turning them into little vehicles, and they all had their individual items. But it was the hardest part was trying to make it be like the actual cartoon that I loved, and also making a game. And it was just impossible because somebody would get ahead, and then it was impossible for anybody to come from behind. And it turns out it's quite hard to make computer games. But God, I probably spent as much time doing that as I did actually playing some of these games, and nothing ever really came from it. But it was a great experience.
I mean, you say nothing really came from it, but I mean, like that's kind of your job now is programming, right?
Oh, actually, yeah. I'm now a professional. I'm a professional terrible programmer.
Nothing came of this thing I did except that it became my job.
But I do wonder that if I got enough into it back then, and if there were any actual resources for me at kind of 13 to 16, 17 to learn actual programming, could I have actually turned it into a proper job? Because now I'm a biologist who does some programming, as opposed to somebody who's actually wicked good at programming and could be earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. But yeah, there just wasn't really anything around when I was a kid to learn this kind of stuff. Not like there is nowadays, where you can access the internet and there's all these tutorials and things.
These kids these days with their internet, I don't know how good they've got it.
Right.
I think we're getting a bit off topic and going into actual educational things, which is completely against the vibe of the show.
Let's avoid that.
Of course. Okay, so the other game I wanted to always bring up, and a true co-op, as we've got a little bit distracted, is Portal 2. So, I mean, I adored the first Portal game. It was everything I wanted, and not only the mechanics, but the story and everything. But the fact that Portal 2 brought in that whole co-op on top of the single-player game, getting a friend, and I played it through with a friend. It wasn't even somebody I ever spoke to, I don't think. And we just, oh yeah, we can play this together. It was the only person I think I knew who had it. I don't know what you guys were doing at the time. But that real puzzle game, so it's not the running around shooting and quick reflexes that a lot of the games around at that time were, which I'm always terrible at, but the strategy of it, but the asymmetry, so you don't really know what the other person's seeing, so they've got to work something out themselves, but you're working together as a team. Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and I thought it added so much. And even after that, when they started adding in extra custom levels that people have made themselves that expanded out, but that's a bit harder to find other people who are around for that as well. But did you guys play through all of this?
I played it with you, so I'm glad you remember our fun times spent together.
That guy you never spoke to.
wait, did I played it? I definitely played it through with another guy that I knew from school as well. Maybe
yeah, but you played it. You played some of it with me.
Okay.
Are you aware of Portal Reloaded, which is a fan-made mod that just came out, where there's a third portal or set of portals that transport you through time? So you're running around a installation, and you can go way into the future, and then in the past, and
yeah, I'm aware of this, and Dan, you, if you're not, you 100% should be, because you should be all over this shit. This is right up your street.
Really.
Oh yeah, no, I installed it last week. I started playing it. I didn't get I can't remember why I didn't get very far. I think I mostly got distracted and forgot that I installed it. But I played through the first hour, say, and it's really good. But it's just adding that extra bit of complexity into it. But yeah, no, I love it. I need to get back on and finish it up.
Yeah. But I love asymmetric co-op, and there's recently been this game, It Takes Two. I've started playing it with my girlfriend, but we're not very far in yet. Have you guys tried that out? Because I think you'll enjoy it in particular, Dan, because it is. I mean, it's not very difficult, but it's a lot of fun. I suggest turning the voices off, because the characters themselves are absolutely annoying as fuck, and we hate them, and we kind of want them to die, or at least we want them to divorce, which is sort of the plot. But figuring out the puzzles between you is a lot of fun, and you do have different capabilities, and you're restricted. So only one of you can go on certain parts of the map, and you open up the way for the other. I've derailed you again. I'm sorry. Do talk about Portal, the portaling.
No. I mean, I feel like most people know what Portal is, and we're just flagging up the co-op. We're flagging up the co-op game being, that was fantastic. But speaking of these asymmetric games, I haven't played It Takes Two yet. It looks good, but I need to find somebody who I'm comfortable playing a game about being a married couple with. And the person who I've been playing a lot of co-op games with is my dad. Over the pandemic, it's been something fun for us to do, and it doesn't feel like it's the right vibe.
What have you been playing with your dad?
So we played. The first one we did through was A Way Out, which is a fun story.
That's by the same guy. It's by the same guy.
Really?
Yeah. So the guy that made It Takes Two, he made A Way Out as well. He's got like this thing for purely co-op games, it seems.
Well, so I liked A Way Out in terms of, it had the story, and it was that asymmetry, and you're two guys in a prison cell that are trying to break out, and one of you's doing it for good because you got locked up for you got framed for something or other whilst trying to take down the mob boss, and you guys are working together, and it's good, but it's a bit, I found it a bit janky, just in terms of, crouch behind this while the guard walks by on his very strict patrol route, and it was good, but that was a good one that I played through with my dad. And we need games that are, let's say, not too complex, because whilst we can have a nice time walking around and pressing the buttons, when it says use this, my dad will have to try and go back to the menu to remember which is the use button is, or when we've walked into a room 2 seconds later, I'm like, okay, let's go. No, by the way, that's the way we came from. So, somebody who hasn't grown up on computer games quite so much, we spend a little bit of time around that. Whereas there was another one we just started playing as well called Operation Tango, and this one only came out in the last month, and that's one we're absolutely loving at the moment. It's really cool, where one of you is a spy and one of you is like the guy in the chair, and it's different to something like A Way Out or It Takes Two, where you can actually, I'm not so sure about It Takes Two. Are you on split screen, or do you have to be on separate screens?
Most of the time it's split screen, but it kind of phases in and out. Sometimes you've got the same screen, and most of the time it's split screen. It's really dynamic.
but you're there, and you can see what the other person's seeing, even if you're doing separate things. And A Way Out was the same in that you were always on the same screen, other than a few times where you'd split, but you could always see what the other person was doing. Whereas Operation Tango is different in that you can only see your own screen, and somebody else has to be on a different computer somewhere else. But what that means is one of you is the spy walking around, and you'll find a piece of information, and then you got to verbally communicate it to the other one, saying, "Oh, I'm in a lift with this code," and then if you're the hacker, you've got to find, okay, I found the lift controls here. Or if you're going around, there was one where we were on a train and trying to stop it from exploding, that you're there and you're saying, oh, I've got the brake fluid manifold, and I've got 2 greens, a red and a blue dial. And then the person on the other one saying, okay, well, in that one, you need to cut the 3rd wire from the left, and then you need to add 2 top ups of this solution. And so it's really asymmetric, and it's all about communication. And there's a little bit of speed in it, and sometimes as the hacker, you can go and you can hack into the security camera so you can see where the person's going. You're saying, okay, there's a drone patrolling. Wait, okay, go now. So it's really engaging in that way that and it's really clever. It's not just the same puzzle over and over again. You know how some games will just be, oh, now you've got the puzzle section. Oh, it's the same pipe game you've been playing for 30 years. And they've just shoehorned it in somehow. But no, this fits really well. It seems on theme.
That sounds really cool. And it sounds like a really fleshed out version of Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Have you guys played that?
Yeah, I've played that a lot.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
that game.
Yeah, so it sounds like kind of expanding on that concept, right? For the people listening who don't know, Keep Talking, No One Explodes is a bomb defusal game, which very much as Dan has described with Operation Tango, it relies on one person being the bomb diffuser sat in a room and somebody completely separate having a bomb manual. So the diffuser will relay what they see on the bomb to the person with the manual, and in an attempt to defuse it. And God, that game's a relationship tester, I'll tell you. But also, it's also really good fun.
I think the only thing I would do to improve it is there's not really much of a storyline in any way. You're just kind of two spies on a mission, go. And it would be kind of cool if they threaded it around some kind of story. To be honest, it would take one day of voice lines to just give you some kind of reason why you're doing these things, but it doesn't detract from the gameplay really at all.
It's just occurred to me that A Way Out and It Takes Two should have their names reversed, because it does take two to escape from prison, and a way out is what the couple in It Takes Two need from their marriage.
I like that. So on the opposite end of the kind of hyper concentration spectrum of the co-op game that I previously listed, of being GTFO, the other co-op game that I really enjoy is Sea of Thieves. So originally when this game came out, it didn't receive very favorable reviews, and quite rightly so. I played it back when it first launched, and there really wasn't much to do. It looked really cool, and the cartoony, really vibrant, bright visuals were awesome, but it just really lacked content. And again, to break it down, Sea of Thieves is a pirate adventure game where you and up to 3 friends can board a big pirate ship and just go sailing off into the unknown and find treasure and all that kind of piratey good stuff. But what I really like about Sea of Thieves, I mean, since launch, it's received tons of updates and stuff, and there's way more content in the game. But it's almost like a video game excuse for a chat room. It's really good just to hang out with your mates. So you will boot up Sea of Thieves, get on a boat, and just start sailing in a random direction, and just have a chat, just kind of hang out on the boat. There is obviously stuff to do, and you can go do these little tasks like digging up treasure or delivering cargo from one place to another. But it's very relaxing in that sense.
I was really disappointed when it came out and was shit, because it looks the business. I absolutely adore the art style and I really wanted it to be good, and then it wasn't, and I kind of forgot about it. And I know it's had a bit of a redemption arc. Personally, it always irritates me when people are like, oh, a game is good now, because I long for the days when games came out and they were just good, and if they weren't, that was it. There was kind of curtains. You couldn't patch a Mega Drive game, for example. There's one thing when it's No Man's Sky and it's a tiny team of indie developers who just kind of overpromised and weren't very good at talking to the press. But when it's fucking Microsoft, I feel less inclined to be charitable. But anyway, go on, because it sounds great, and maybe I'll buy it and we'll hang out on the high seas.
Well, it's developed by Rare, of Banjo-Kazooie and Rare. So
Rare.
They've got some pretty good credentials behind them.
Yes.
And so it was a bit disappointing when it first came out. And to be totally honest, in terms of someone who's really into deep mechanical games, Sea of Thieves really isn't that. The combat is very basic. You can swing your sword at some skeletons and the skeletons die, or you have some single shot weapons in the game as well. But it is very, very basic in terms of the actual mechanical depth. But what really grabs me from in Sea of Thieves is the emergent gameplay. So it's like a semi-massively multiplayer kind of game. Like when you load in, you'll be put in a lobby, and I think there's up to, I might be getting this wrong, but I think it's 8 other ships like on the sea somewhere, which are also crewed by just like a party of dudes. So the great thing about the game is as you go around and you're hanging out doing your little treasure collection missions or whatever you're doing, you may just bump into another crew somewhere. And it's a lot easier for those guys, rather than investing the time to go out and dig up buried treasure, just to take yours. So the kind of ship on ship combat will break out. The voice in the game is really cool. So as you're sailing past another ship, you can equip a megaphone and like hurl abuse if you're so inclined at the other crews. You can shoot yourself out of cannons in an attempt to board other ships. There's some really cool stuff you can do with sneaky plays. So, for example, if you can see a ship in the distance that's kind of chasing up behind you, you can tell your mates to carry on sailing as you jump off the boat. And then if you time it perfectly and position yourself perfectly, as the enemy ship comes up to you, they might not notice you're there, and you can grab onto one of the ladders on the side of their boat. And then if you manage to sneak aboard, maybe with like a cask of dynamite or TNT or something, you could sneak down into the lower levels of their ship and blow them up from the inside. There's really cool like moments, and that's the best thing about it, I think, is that you have these kind of unforgettable, completely emergent moments that come out of the game, and as well as all this good stuff. Like I said, recently they've added some actual more story. Previously, there was a lot of these little missions where you went off and dig up treasure or do this. They've added some proper story missions in there where there's kind of like a campaign which you can go off and play with your friends. But there's still obviously that threat that some other ship might see you as you're trying to go about your business and interfere. But that's really what the game's about. If you're not up for the PvP, I'd say leave it, because it's inevitable. It's going to happen. You're going to get messed with, and hopefully you'll be messing with other people too.
That does sound amazing, and it sounds like everything I miss from World of Warcraft, of just a bunch of people being there and kind of going around, working together. You're finding yourself in places that you don't know. You're not on a strict track of this is what you're doing right now, and yeah, it sounds exactly that kind of thing. Whereas Warcraft just got boring after a while because it just got too grindy and same. Just sailing around the whole world, seeing what's going on and messing people up.
Yeah, and it's to the benefit of the game, but also to its detriment, in the sense of you could jump on for a session with your friends of playing Sea of Thieves, and you sail around looking for adventure and looking for fights, and not really find any, because it is on the back of these other players being there and what the other team want to do. Like sometimes you'll just come across another ship and they'll think, yeah, we're just gonna get out. We've got too much loot. We're just gonna run. But there are mechanics in place, such as like the direction of the wind and the way that you position your sails. Like the whole sailing of the ship is a co-op experience. In the case of like you've got one guy on the wheel, you've got one guy that's going to be manning the cannons, or you've got one guy that's positioning the sails for you to go faster or slower and stuff. So.
Do you have a class that you have to choose?
No, this and the progression in the game doesn't really exist. So right from the very beginning, you can get any boat in the game. Usually you'd pick it depending on how many people you have on your team, which is another really cool point, actually. So if you only have 2 people at a time playing it, you just choose the sloop, which is the smaller 2-man boat. It doesn't have as much firepower as the galleons, but you can control it with just 2 people. It's much more nimble. The turning circle is a lot quicker, so you can outmaneuver your opponents if you get chased and stuff like that. But in terms of and you have everything. So if you have 4 people, you can get on a galleon. And the enemy team will have no competitive advantage over you whatsoever. All the weapons are the same. You have access from everything from the very beginning. So in terms of like a reason to play, all it really is as you accumulate gold and in-game currency, it's really just for things like weapon skins and cosmetics. The game never changes past that, really. There's not a part where you'll be like, oh my god, I just unlocked this new fancy gadget. It's you have everything from the beginning. in a way, I think that's cool and should be commended because it gives no competitive advantage. But at the same time, it does leave wanting for something in terms of like, I'm getting all this treasure and accumulating all this money, but all I can really spend it on is these like cosmetic upgrades.
Great. I mean, I'm sold.
And as a quick mention, so I don't know if you guys have used Xbox Game Pass for PC, but
I used the $1 like original one, and I played a bunch of stuff, and I was like, okay.
But in my opinion, it's pretty much the best deal in gaming at the moment. Like your standard subscription is like $7.99 or something, and you get access to a ton of games. It's like the closest that there is currently as like Netflix, but for video games.
It seems too good to me. It seems like if this is the direction gaming goes in, then devs will be scrabbling for pennies and scraps from the table. So I'm a little bit wary about it.
But from a consumer point of view, right? It's pretty good.
Yep, you can't complain. It's for the games you get for it and the way that they cycle and the low price. I mean, you can't complain. Let's just hope we're not putting people out of business.
Yeah, currently as well, Dan, if you're interested in trying any like Sea of Thieves out as an example, it's £1 and you get 3 months subscription. And Sea of Thieves is included on Xbox Game Pass as well as like a load of other stuff. Like there's tons on there.
So I'm going to tell you a story now of my impetuousness in that while you were just talking it all through, because I have Steam in the background, I've already pressed and I've bought it and I've got it installing right now. Before I waited to hear about how I could get it for £1 for 3 months.
Yeah, so £1 for 3 months, as well as like a big old library of other games. But yeah.
Well, I've learned a lesson today to not buy games in the middle of a podcast recording.
And the other thing I should say, Dan, is in terms of Sea of Thieves, I really enjoy it as like I said, a casual hangout game, but it is that and you can play it solo, absolutely, but prepare to be bullied, because the low, like the smaller ship sizes, so that 2-man vessel, if you're on your own, you can absolutely pilot it, but you're going to be jumping in between, having to run to adjust your sails and then run back to the steering wheel. So if you're being chased, it is quite difficult to compete. There are people that do it, like that are really skilled at the game. But yeah, it's just really good fun.
Well, it sounded exciting, and I just want to drive around a little pirate ship. It's okay. I'll go make some friends and be like, "Hi." I'll just be the I can't. What do they call the cabin boy? That's what I want to say. Rent boy came into my head, and I knew that wasn't right.
That's something different.
Right word. So one of the other things for co-op games that we haven't touched on yet is all of those ones that are, what I like to think of them as like party co-op games, especially things that run on the Switch, which things like Overcooked are classics. My favorite one at the minute is Lovers in the Dangerous Space-Time, which if you haven't seen that, you're just basically cute little bunny alien things that you have to go around and save some others from. They've been captured by some weird aliens, but it's all really hearts and lovely, really neon colors. And you can have up to 4 of you on a little spaceship. Somebody's driving, somebody's firing some guns, somebody's using the shield. But it's just the best kind of co-op game of you going, no, don't go over there. No, you go over here. Run. No. And then you're dead. But it's like hyper cutified. It's really lovely, but it takes absolutely no instruction. You can just throw people into it, and it's absolute favorite party one. What about you guys? Favorite party co-op game?
Well, touching on Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time, I've only seen clips of it and it looked really cool. I was just curious because I know you're kind of piloting this ship, aren't you? Like around a 2D environment.
Yes.
Does it? From what I've seen, it takes more than one person to control the direction or something. Like you can't just have one guy steering. Is that right?
No, one person can definitely steer it themselves. But then you wouldn't survive 30 seconds doing that because you can't. Nobody can. There's 4 guns, so you need somebody normally running from bow to stern to pick a different gun. But then you also need your shield. Really, you need the shield because there's just lasers that you couldn't drive through unless somebody's putting the shield in the right place as well. And then you've got a few other different weapons or a map that you absolute minimum is 2, realistically 3, to survive more than 30 seconds, I would say. And it's got quite a nice upgrade system in that you always start with the same base ship, and as you go around, you can pick up an upgrade, or as you level up, you pick up an upgrade to make one of the guns more powerful, or make the engine drop little mines as you fly away, or have the shield be bouncing people back instead of just protecting you. So it's quite a nice upgrade system, but it's a very simple one, but it's really lovely. It's my top recommendation.
Is it playable with 2 people? Because I've always wanted to play it, but I feel like I'd only ever end up playing it sort of couch co-op.
Oh yeah, 100%. You can do it with 2 people. When you're doing that, you can get a little bot basically that'll go around and do some other things for you.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can have an AI player as well that will help you. But my best experiences is having 4 people, and it does. But it's got that kind of, it's not the chaos of Overcooked of somebody screwed something up and the whole thing's fallen to pieces. You can put somebody on a gun. You'd be like, right, you stay there, shoot at anything that comes close. Fine, we'll do the complicated stuff. So everybody can kind of engage in it in a way that you can't really when you get into Overcooked and you're just running around with a tomato for 3 minutes straight and you've no idea what you're doing. It's not about any of that kind of complexity.
I enjoy Overcooked, but I find it incredibly stressful because I'm not very good at following the orders in the top. It's something that I feel like if it was a single player game, I'd be really good at it, but playing it with other people, I always end up causing problems.
Yeah, those are the kind of games I kind of tend to get hyper competitive with. And I don't mean anything bad by it, but if we're playing a competitive game,
I want to win!
such as Overcooked, I want to win. And if I'm shouting at you, it's just because I want to win.
I don't mean any of those horrible things I said.
Yeah, exactly. That thing I said about your mother, yeah, don't take it personally.
She's a classy lady, and you are lucky to have her.
How's things in Japan now, Tom? Is things open or is everything closed, or where are you at?
I mean, it's interesting. Nothing was ever properly closed because, well, restaurants were, but basically the Japanese government can't enforce a lockdown like other countries did, like a lot of other countries did. They've only ever requested that businesses kind of stay closed or whatever. So most restaurants did. Then they pushed through some emergency powers to find restaurants that were open. So the restaurants did close, but then we've gone sort of in and out of this emergency state. And this is my favorite thing. They've got this designation that's sort of not a proper emergency, but it's a kind of everybody be careful thing, and they call it mambo. Like the Japanese word it is mambo. And I'm rooting for us to go into enough waves of emergency and non-emergency that we end up with Mambo number 5.
Wait, how many Mambos have you had so far?
Yeah, what are you on? I want to find out now. You Mambo number 3?
I think we're around Mambo number 3.
Ooh, fingers crossed. Oh, wait. By the time the Olympics come around, if you've had another couple, it'll actually be the official song of the Olympics.
That's what I'm hoping for.
That'd be good. So that's about all the time we have for this episode. Obviously, there are so many games that we may have missed, so let us know about your favorites. Just get in touch with us. That's @Florpcast on Twitter, or email us florpcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.